But so we got to talk about last week doing traditional animations, and the way we'd do it is we'd have our, our big stack in the animation pane with all the different animations that we've applied to a particular shape or some words, and then we'd set them all to be in the order we want and take as long as we want so that the timing is all exactly the way we want it. So what I was going to show today is some different features that work specifically in Microsoft 365 for animation that's a little bit easier, because even though this works perfectly fine, it can be sometimes a little bit much for what you're trying to do, and there is an easier way. And that easier way is called morphing. And I'll just show kind of a basic animation series, this star here. I'll click on it, and maybe I'll have, as it goes across my screen, I'll make it rotate a little. So I'm going to add animation, going to, let's see, maybe turns, that's not quite right. Maybe this grow and turn option. Oh, here it is, spin. There we go. So we've added this spin animation. I'll set it to play with the previous. Here we go. So this is kind of the way it would look. Oh, didn't move across the screen, did it? So let's see. On click, play from, there we go. So that's one way to sort of set this up. And there's an easier way too. This one's pretty basic, but let's say we're taking this green star. What we'd do is we'd morph it. And morph works by duplicating the slide, and you change the shape to be exactly where you want it to be. I'm going to hold down Shift so it moves just in a straight line for me. I'm going to move it across the screen, and then I'll grab this little arrow up here and spin it around as well. Maybe not that far, maybe just a 180. And the morph feature, it's not under the animation pane, oddly enough. It lives over in transitions because it's a slide sort of transition. So we'd go to the slide that we're morphing, hit transitions, and it's this option here, morph. And now you can see it does the same sort of thing that it was doing over here, where we'd go to our animation.
Well, the green one seemed to move counterclockwise and the blue one moves clockwise.
That's true. And it doesn't, morph is interesting. In animation, you could change that. In morph, it will just pick the direction it wants to go, and then it'll go with that. So if I were to spin it over to maybe to here, it might choose a different route. Let's see. We'll open it big. Oh, it just, because I did 360 degrees, that's why. So perhaps if I just spun it that way, we'll give that a try. Go back. Whoop. So you can see it doesn't have quite as much versatility in this sort of way, but it is a little bit faster if you say had a lot of things going on. Maybe the star at the same time that it was spinning, it was also growing. So you could just, here, we'll hit Shift, pull it up like that. We'll recenter that to where it was before on the slide. I think that was right about there. And then we could look at that transition again. And so it lets you stack a bunch of different features on top of each other. And this is sort of a basic way of looking at it. Here's kind of a more complicated version. What we could do if we wanted to morph this slide is create a sort of illusion effect. And with these mountains, something we could do is make it look like we're coming towards the mountains and the sun is rising, which would be really challenging to do with traditional animations. I would not know how to actually make those color gradients work in that way. So you could pull back these hills, make it look like we're approaching, oops, click outside for a minute. Accidentally held onto them at once, there we go. like we're moving in close to the mountains. You could click all of them and make them a little bit bigger. Oops, here. I'll hold down Control and Shift and then they'll stay centered. And then you could click on the clouds and move them. Maybe they're blowing in the wind a little bit. Maybe they're going off this way. And then you could even say go to Design and format the background. And we could change where this color gradient in the background is and make it look a little bit like the sun is rising. Add another stop. Maybe add some pink color to it. So we could change that color there. More colors. Maybe something like this. Almost magenta lavendery color. That's kind of bright. Maybe we'll make this back to yellow. Oops, there we go. So we could close this now, and let's set that morph transition and see what it does. And that happens pretty fast. We could slow that down just like a traditional animation. Here on the slide transitions, it shows a duration option, and this we could maybe make 10 seconds. Oh, here we go. Boop. And now it'll hit enter. And now it'll look like we're slowly coming up towards the mountains and the sun is rising. So it gives you a different sort of toolbox per se when you're
that works
working with
well.
animations. Yeah, you can see it's not so great with the stars, but it works pretty well if you're trying to change pictures around. The other place where it kind of fails is trying to change one shape to another. I'll show what happens if you try to do that, because it's pretty comical how it goes about it. So I'd hit insert. Let's change this shape. Boop. Nope, I'm looking at the wrong thing. To insert shape, circle. So there we go. If we try to swap these out, this is what it'll try to do. Here, I'll go back, hit transition, hit morph. It just fades one shape out and fades in the new one, which is not useful. So there is a way to sort of get around it.
I guess if you had words in them, it would be useful. You know, like two sentences that one led to the other.
That's true. That would work too. Another thing is editing these points. You can play with these a little bit and it'll change how those work too. If you were to work on the same points for the shape, you could change it this way, maybe make it some sort of weird, that's not even a polygon anymore. But at this point you could hit edit points and probably hit morph and it would try to do something with it. It sort of
like
works.
Someone took a bite out of it or something.
Yeah, or like it's melting. Maybe that's a way to do it. Could make this be a candle. And then this is its little candle stub at the end.
That'll work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good one.
So there are ways to use it and to make it functional, but I typically think kind of making these fun backgrounds is the most useful method for it. There's also a way to do it with text, like you were saying. And here, so I'll bring up, I have these two slides here. They obviously have different text. And what I'll do is I'll insert that morph transition. You can see it does what it typically had before, where it just kind of fades in, fades out like it did for this shape. And what you can do is you can change it. That's the first of the three ways. Just have it fade in as one big object. Or you can go to these effect options next to all the different transition options, and you can change it from object to words. And so if there's any words that are the same between the two slides, it'll keep those and just move them around, kind of like you're rearranging like Scrabble tiles or something. So it just kind of slid that one word across. So you could plan these out a little bit better to maybe have more similar words, but the spelling has to be the same and the capitalization has to be the same too. So I'd have to capitalize this P here. And we could see that morph. Whoops. But it kept it as an object. So here we go. Boom. So that's one way. Another way is to do it just by characters. And this one I think is the most fun. It's really the most exciting to look at, I think. And even though it maybe doesn't have a ton of practical uses, it might be fun as a way to show like how to make a point of these things are similar. And it's a way to kind of convey that idea of how many similarities are pulled together. Just kind of reinforcing that metaphor, you might say.
Yeah.
And there's other sorts of uses for it too. You could do morph to, so I'll show what this is a little better by zooming out. It's a picture of a phone and it's got a second screen, and you could potentially make it look like someone has scrolled up on the screen by using the morph tool. Click the picture, there we go. I'm gonna hold down shift so it goes in a straight line for me and slide it up to right about there. And then click morph, and it looks like someone scrolled it along. So that's one way
So
you
what
could
did
do
you
it.
have, a box with a cutout in it and then that picture behind it?
Yeah, remember last week
Yeah.
we were working with, oh gosh, that picture of the globe.
Right.
So here, I'll zoom in a little bit more. Oops, that's too much. There we go. A little bit farther out. There we go. So what I've got a black box with a cutout that is the shape of that phone. So the way I would make this particular one, I'll put another hole in my image to show you, is so I take this shape and I'd take the shape that I want cut out of it, which is probably that guy right there, and I'd make a copy of this so I don't lose it. So I'm going to hit Control C, then Control V, slide my copy somewhere. And then what I'll do is I'll click the shape that I want to keep, which is this one, and then I'll go to the Format tab, hit Control and click the second shape, which is this one, and then I'll merge the shapes. So we'll subtract. And it's trying to do it as a square. So, oh, I see. If you look at the corners, you can see instead of being a truly rounded shape, it's going all the way out to the sides. So I'd probably draw, here we go. I would draw a shape, here we go. Insert, shape, this rounded edged rectangle, and I would lay it over as close as I could the little guy underneath. So it's got to be a little bit wider. You're not right about like that. I'll scoot it just a little, and you could finagle it just to get it exactly right. But that's probably close enough. So I'll click on the big shape that I want, select the second shape, go to merge, and subtract. Now you can see it's cut a hole in the black shape about the size of the little phone screen. And now I can see behind it, which is where I've put this picture. And then this is towards the front so that that's laying on top of the black, creating a little frame for it. So I'll move those back real quick just to give that. You can see they're not quite lined up, but they're close enough to create the illusion. There we go. So then, once again, that morph tool just, whoops, had it on the wrong side. Here we go. That morph tool just shows it slide up, and I didn't put that cutout hole on the second one so you could see it faded that one away. And I've seen folks use this also to zoom in on things too. So let's say this was maybe the next step in the series. I'd duplicate this slide again. And then perhaps I want to zoom in right on one of the apps when I look at this. So what I would do is I would select this and I would select the picture. And this would be hard because I'd have to make a new hole and I would make it bigger. And let's slide this up. Maybe we can get rid of this entirely. And probably the easiest thing to do here to recreate that illusion would be to put black boxes on either side of this phone. So I would insert a shape, make it like this. It won't be quite perfect, but that's okay. We'll make it black. Black. Bring up that selection pane. Send those to the very back so there's nothing in front of them. Excuse me, nothing behind them. And there's a little bit of corner there that doesn't quite look right. So let's control. We'll slide this down. And my picture got a little disaligned. Oops. So we'll slide it right there. And so now when we morph, what'll happen, we'll play the slideshow from here. It slides up, and then it zooms in. Because I fiddled with things a little bit, it changes it. But you can see how you might use this then to zoom in and on that scroll. So you'd duplicate that slide. We'll zoom out a little bit. And it's really just the transition that allows you to pull things along and move smoothly from one to another. So then from here, let's set that. Okay, that's all set. And now it would scroll up a little. So that's another way to use it, and it's funny because sometimes it works a lot easier than doing traditional animations. This is something that I've already set up. This is how you'd have to get it to do an animation of zooming out on a map and pulling it in, which takes some different types of moving tools and shrinking tools and coordinating the timing of those to be exactly perfect. Whereas to do it with Morph, all I have to do is make this shape a little bit smaller, pull it into the middle, and then just add that transition, and then it's done, which is nice, and I think a little bit smoother perhaps than this. And certainly a lot easier. So that's one of the really cool features in Microsoft 365. Let me pull up my other slideshow because I have some more features I want to show that are pretty cool. And the picture I wanted to put in here did not work. The files got corrupted at the last minute, so I rechanged this a little. Originally, I was going to pull in a viola, and I had these slides about a viola. I was like, oh, that's not working. So we'll use a dragon instead. And this is something that is new with 365, and it's these 3D models, and they live under insert, just like you would grab a picture or a shape, an icon. It's just another option, and you can grab it from a file. In theory, this is the file I was trying to grab, and it was not working. And these are all the different file types that you can pull in usually. I think what happened is I downloaded this online and I'm missing a texture file, which would cause that to have a problem. So unfortunately, I can't use that one, but
So when you
luckily,
downloaded it, would have had more than one file, would have been a folder of files that
yeah,
make it work.
and I think that downloading process, something didn't quite go to the right place, and so it won't pull in. But luckily, PowerPoint has this huge collection on its own of 3D
Good.
models. And these are all in the community commons. So they're things that you can take for free and use. So you don't have to worry about copyright infringement. I've got this big yellow box on my screen, unfortunately. Do you see that, Susan? Excuse me.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll just roll with it. This has been new on my Zoom lately, and I think they did an update, which is what's causing that, but that's okay. So you can see there's all these different categories in which you can find 3D animations, and some of them are dynamic and some of them aren't. I'll grab a static one for now, and they take a little bit of time to download. I'll just grab this first little dragon guy here, maybe this one. This one's pretty cool. We'll grab him. And so it'll bring up this little pop-up saying it's inserting the model for you. And once it takes usually about between 10 to 30 seconds to pull it in, you can do all sorts of things with it. And we'll go through that in a minute. They work very much like pictures in that you can make them bigger or smaller, and you can also do something unique for them since they are 3D, and that's rotate them around. So this one is very spirally, and so it has some cool
I
different
love
angles.
it.
It's really fun, and they're just unique things
How
to
do you
add
get
to
it to spin
presentations.
by itself?
To spin by itself. So what I'm doing is I'm grabbing in the middle, it has this little orbiting tool, and that's what I'm pulling and dragging around. They're a little bit hard to move exactly the way you want, but they help you out up here. They have these sort of preset different views of the dragon, and you can hold over them to see what they look like. And open this up to see a few more. So let's see. That one's pretty good.
Yeah,
And so you can find one that's close to what you want
I
and
like
then
that
just
one.
tweak it a little. So that's something you can do. And if
So
you
you
want to just,
record the spin, you mean? Do you record it?
nope, I'm not recording it at all. I'm just placing it on the slide. So I can move him around if I click anywhere that isn't that little globe, and I can drag him about. So maybe I want him here, but I want him a bunch bigger. You can resize him just like a photograph, grabbing the corner and pulling it up. And I don't have to record anything. He's just a static figure. If I wanted to, I could record him and move him around. But that's a little bit more complicated than I was going to go into. If you want, I can
Okay.
go through that. It's pretty fun. I did have one set up to show. Would you like to see that?
Sure.
Okay, so here, let me grab the right slide here. Pew, I have so many tabs up. Ugh. Let's see. I need to show all windows. Here we go. Okay. So this is, it just looks like outer space, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I go through the slides, it just kind of moves through. It's not very exciting, but what I can do is I can morph it. Oh, whoops. I have my goofy little layers. So let's put insert, not insert, transitions, morph. Let's see. It was working earlier. It's being a pain, so I'll have to do it from scratch again. That's okay. Let's duplicate the slide here. And then what I can do is spin these, not that one. Maybe zoom in. Just gonna change this position. So once you make it the way you want it, maybe I'll pull that around. Maybe I'll spin this guy too. So now morphing these will create something like that.
Oh, fun.
So what I can do is once I have it moving the way I want, I'll record it. So I'll get rid of these other slides. Pew, just hitting the delete key. And so it's set to play after 0 seconds. That's good. And I'm going to make this go just a little bit slower. I'll make this maybe 12 seconds instead of 2. Let's see how that works. Oh, I was on the wrong slide. Got to start from the beginning. Pew. Okay. So it starts slowly moving along. Nice. There's my planets moving in space. So that's what it'll look like when I record it.
Very nice.
So what I'll do, hit escape, and we'll go to, I have my recording tab up here, and you could also do it from slideshow. You can do it there as well. Doesn't matter. I just, out of habit, like doing it here. And what I'll do is I'll export to video, and I'm just gonna save it on my desktop. We probably don't need it that big. Use recorded timings. Just want to make sure those are set so that it goes the way we expect it to. And we'll hit create video. It'll take a minute. I'll set it right there so it's easy to find. Space. Okay, so then let me pull up the next thing. Then you can pull these recordings into other presentations, which is really fun. That's where I think kind of the magic of animating in PowerPoint comes in. I'll bring up my next screen. Here we go. See if it'll load for me. It says not responding. It's always a good sign. Here we go. So this is when I set it up so it already has the video inside it. But you can see what's going on here. There's a bunch of layers. These are 3D animated figurines that I put in, and they came from this insert 3D models online sources. And there's these animated models, and that was easiest for my purposes. But you could animate your different, say that dragon, we could morph it to rotate it around to the next slide, and then we could record that and then insert that into the next presentation if we wanted to.
Okay.
So let me show where the astronauts are. Oops. You can just search up there. And so this was one that I pulled, and he has what's called 2 different scenes. I won't hit insert because that'll take a long time. But if we go to format, just like you'd format a picture, there's those views that we saw for the dragon. There's the different selection panes, bring it forward and backwards, but there's also these scenes. And so there's several. He's on scene 3, which is a scene where he waves. And this guy is on scene 1, where he just kind of floats looking that way. But we could put him this way, and he's at a slightly different angle, and he looks around a little bit. He just moves a little bit differently. Scene 4, he's doing a spacewalk, I guess.
Wow.
So it's really fun and dynamic, and you can create really entertaining things. And we'll bring him back to, he was on 1, wasn't he? There we go. And so he is set up, if I'm not mistaken. Did I put his animations in? I did not. So what I'll do is I'll morph these slides. I'll duplicate the slide. And then on the second one, what'll happen is this little guy, we'll pull him. Let's make sure our animation pane, I did set this up so it wouldn't do it. Let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of all those. So we'll just drag him up to his window and drag this guy, oops, gotta get him on his own, drag him over to the window so they get to say hi to each other. And then we'll morph these together. Let me make sure that scene 1 doesn't have any crazy animations going on. So the only one that I really want is for space to be playing around. They're already doing what they need to. So we'll just make sure that animation, if you remember from last week, we can get it to play across the slides. We'll hit that. Timing. Let's see, with previous, that should work. Let's let her play. Oh, it might try to play the whole movie before it. The whole movie that we recorded before it brings in our astronauts.
That's okay.
So let's see. What I'll do to quickly fix that, I think all we gotta do is set this to do its transition. Transition. Duration. Here we go. Have it transition immediately. I think that'll do it. And it takes a little bit of guessing and playing around with to make it work. It might still not quite be set up. Yeah, it still wants to play through, but we'll just see how it goes. The planets slide up. And now our astronauts are probably about to come on into view. Oh, I don't know. It's just going to keep on spinning, I guess. So something went awry, but that's okay. Oh, you know what else we could have done? We could have just set this up, our little video in the background. We could get this to play automatically. If I do... Sometimes I get really into this, and even though it doesn't really matter, I get excited about making it work. So we'll hit play. Animate. Play. Let's see if it'll do it. Looks like it will. Okay. And we could slide our... Make sure this is all lined up. There we go. Oh. And the last thing I wanted to show after we got into the 3D models, because we're kind of showing it here, how it interacts with all the layers, and you know, oh, they zoomed in real fast, so that would be something that maybe could change, but you get the idea. So with those 3D recordings, you can do all kinds of fun stuff with them. I'll go back to the other guy now. This dragon, we could move him to the next slide. I'm just going to hit copy. I'm going to go to the next slide, hit paste, bring him in, and we'll slide him over and maybe rotate him around a little. And this is something where you could morph as well and see how exactly it would go. We'll hit transition, morph, and you'll see he rotates about and the new facts come up. So you can play with this all you want. Nice. It's really fun. And with layers and stuff, I think this fish example is probably the better one to do. We could insert some little fishies, perhaps for our fish tank. I'll use online again and grab probably just these ones right here on the top. Boom, little tropical fish. And this is another thing where this is one of those animations that moves around, kind of like the astronauts who are waving or doing their little moonwalk. These fish will swim about, which is pretty fun. And you can
Nemo's stuck in a
yeah, stuck in their little glass box. But we can do some different things with them to make it look more realistic. They're a little bit small right now, maybe a little bigger like that. And this box is pretty big, even though the fish are in the middle here. And that's because eventually throughout the animation, they'll move all the way to the corners. And so if you're trying to make it look perfect, you want to make sure that you don't, make it so big that your fish end up swimming outside of the tank. Otherwise, it kind of ruins the illusion. So we could rotate them a little bit to make them kind of more in line with the fish tank bottom. Boop. Maybe make it a little bit bigger so they can swim throughout more of their tank. And something that might be run into at a certain point is they might cross this little barrier of the fish tank. And all you have to do to kind of deal with that is make a new line for them to go in front of. So what I would do is I'd copy this particular picture, which is the fish tank, and then I'd paste it. It's going to go in front and it's going to hide our fish for a minute. Then we can just crop it so that it's only the size of that little post there. And if you wanted to get really fancy, you could make something that was maybe the size of the this panel over here, and make it a little bit of a different transparency so it gives some depth to the fish tank. But I'd like to show you some more stuff before we run out of time, so I'll go back to that if we've got a chance for it. And the last thing I was going to show is something in 365, which is called, there's two things, but they're both powered by Office intelligent software. It's very strange, but also really, really functional. I just have it set up here. So I've got this blank presentation here. And on your normal design tab in PowerPoint, you've got all of these different basic themes. But if you turn on the intelligent settings, which what you'd do is you'd go into your options and turn them on from there. We'd go to customize ribbon, I think. Oop, I might be in the wrong spot. Let's see, options, turn on features. I think it's over here. Let me see. Well, I'm not seeing it right away, but what we could always do is just type it in up here and put intelligent AI, and then we'd hit search and it would find it for us. So it is already downloaded, so I'll just show you how it works. And it brings up this button over here on Designer, these design ideas. And with a completely blank slide, you can even click on it then, and it says no design ideas. So what if we add in a title? Let's insert a text box and say, ideas can be hard. So once I do that, and maybe make it a little bit bigger, it'll start giving me some ideas about what maybe I want my slide to look like. So I'd go to design, design ideas, And what it's doing is it's reading the words that I've typed in and coming up with suggestions as far as what maybe I would want for this slide. It says, okay, maybe it's a title slide, maybe it's about ideas, or maybe it's about something that's hard. So you can see at the beginning it shows these dumbbells, and at the end it's showing people and a little light bulb being generated. So if I click on that, it'll change what the slide looks like for me automatically. And although I typically don't go with exactly what it picks, it's a really helpful head start a lot of the times. So maybe I had a picture that I wanted. I'll hit Control Z. Maybe I wanted to have a picture of someone working at a desk. I'd grab an online picture from Insert. Let's see, student at desk. Let's see what we find. Perfect. This bored child is exactly what I need. We'll make him a, and you can see, oh, undo. It comes up with all of these suggestions that involve that picture. You can see, you can just kind of go through them. And it keeps the content that you have on your slide, but modifies them in a way that it thinks you might want to present your information. It's also really helpful when you're working with a bunch of pictures. These are just puppies that I grabbed off the internet, and they're all different sizes. And what it'll do is it'll give you these suggestions of layouts. And if you just want all your pictures to be the same size, instead of having to go back through and reshape all of them, cropping them and resizing them, it'll automatically do that for you, which is really handy. It'll give you some that are kind of like a little snapshot. And it can do this with up to 6 pictures. Unfortunately, over 6, it gets overwhelmed and doesn't work anymore. But you can see how this might be useful if you're just trying to quickly get pictures to be the right shape and size, or have a layout for them, if you're not feeling particularly creative on a given day. So those are 2 of the ways that that design tool can help you out when you're making a presentation. Another thing that it does with that's kind of new is it has this draw option, and it lets you write with different pens, which are pretty fun just on its own. And I've seen people who are making courses for where so many students are doing their online schooling now, they'll use it for this. And you can add different pens. You can make them big or little. Maybe this one's a highlighter. You can change the color to be whatever you want. So let's maybe make this one some shade of purple. And you get this big purple pen that you can do whatever you want with. We'll make a smiley face. And what's fun about this isn't so much that it's useful, but you can do different things with it too. There's this ink replay button, and it lets these things that you draw come across the screen as a video. So this would be another way where you might incorporate a video into your presentation later. So maybe you're doing a math problem and you first make a little video of writing out the problem, and then you write out each step, and then you can play it one step at a time for students. And they also have this ink to math option. Here, I'll close out of the replay. There we go. And this is helpful if you're trying to write specific equations in here, and trying to find those symbols can be a bit of a pain. So let's say we're talking about circles, and we want to talk about maybe the circumference, which is going to be 2 pi r. It'll put that all together for me, and I could write equals, and then it'll probably let me get away with writing, but it won't for that one. So you can erase. It doesn't really do words at this point, so we could insert that little thing and then type in afterwards circumference. So that's another useful tool depending on what you're trying to do in PowerPoint. It can be hit or miss sometimes, especially if you're working with fractions. That's where I've found it to be most ineffective. If we were doing a plus b divided by c plus d, it figures it out okay. But once it gets a little more complicated, maybe we extend that, and it doesn't understand that it's an extended line. It thinks there's a subtraction. So as you can see, it does different things. But there's one last thing that I want to show that's pretty new and fun when you're working with PowerPoint in 365, and that's all these options for recording a presentation. And what is useful about it is it has a lot of features that are pretty common in Zoom, but not common in a lot of other things. And this is how I've kind of shown some people who want to put together a presentation that can just be played, and it has, you know, their pre-recorded narrations and timings, and they don't have to do it on the fly in a Zoom call. They can just have it already ready to go. It's not adaptable that way, but it can be useful depending on what they're trying to do. So if you're in the recording tab and you go to record slideshow, they have a few different options from current slide or from the beginning. Let's just pretend we're doing it from the beginning. And what it'll do, it'll bring up this slide that is that original beginning slide. And you have these buttons down here. And right now it actually has, usually it brings up a little preview of myself talking, which is sometimes distracting, and I typically turn it off from this button here. I'm guessing it isn't doing that just because I have Zoom running. But this is the camera preview button, and this is the camera itself. You could record your slideshow without a mini you at all. Oh, I see. Okay, it's just being funky. So anyway, you could also mute yourself as well and bring up these different pens so you could annotate your slides as you're talking. And it works just like a regular recording. You've got your record, stop, and replay. And as you go along, if you hit record, you can hit stop as soon as you're done and then transition to the next slide, and it won't start recording immediately on you. You have to hit that button for it to go. And that way you can either just keep running through if you want it to be smooth like that, or if you just want to go through, you can do it that way and stop it and restart it. And it even lets you have access to your notes while you're doing this too. And these won't show up in the recording, but there's something so you can see it. Maybe you have your script written out and you can just read it as you go and then hit stop and then move on to the next slide. And you can make your notes bigger. So you could type in here, I think. Nope, it won't let me. I'd have to type it from before, but I'll show you how that would work. We'd exit out, go in, pull up our notes. And then if we went to record the show from that current slide, we can bring it up and we can see exactly what we had. And we can make it bigger if it's hard for us to read. And that's another way that we can do that. And you can adjust your settings too. If you have two different microphones or two different cameras, you can adjust which one you're using. And when you're done, you get to save that. You can save your timings and you can save your narrations, and it'll be one file, one video file that you can keep and then share for a later date, or even use in another PowerPoint. Say you want to have one PowerPoint presentation as your opening slide. It has all your introductions and narrations for that intro, and you have that already set ready to go. And once that plays, you get into the bigger presentation. Maybe it's a talk about your company before you go into your project, something like that. And we can just click out by hitting that little X at the top. And we're back on our slide. So those are the basic features that I was going to show. Was there anything in particular that you want to go into a little more in depth, Susan, before we
Well,
sign
for
out?
today on one of these, you mean?
Sure.
Oh, I can't really think of so much. I really like that idea of the AI, the intelligent AI, whatever it's called, to kind of always have that as an option. That's what I would
Yeah.
probably eh, add right away,
Do you want me to
just,
find where to pull that up from? Would that be helpful?
well, you just put it in the search
Yeah, I think
box.
usually that works for me. And this is also powered by some of the intelligent services. So let's try that. Couldn't find what I was looking for. So let's try just that word. See what it finds. Oh, it's not looking in the right box. I was searching my document for that word. Silly me.
Oh,
Let me try. Let me try. I think it is under options. It might be under add-ins. No, advanced. Let's see. Because these are all set up under here. And it did take me a minute to try to get it working when I was originally doing this. Let's see. Advanced. I'm not seeing it right away. I can have a little intro to how to get those up in the next lesson. Make sure that that's in there. I thought I had it. It's one of those things you do it once and then it keeps that setting for forever. I'm not
is
sure
it
how
is
to.
it in the insert
I don't.
or
It shouldn't be under insert because it is a setting. Let me see
oh,
real quick. If I pull up another
I always go to
slide.
help.
Yeah, yep, I do too. There's so much you can get from there. Turn on. It's one of those things that comes right up when you search Google. Let's see, options. That's for a different version. Let's see. Okay, I was right. It was under general. So let me go back to where I was. Boom. So it should be under file, options, general. So this is PowerPoint Designer. That's part of that. Always show design ideas. Interesting. The internet told me that this is where turning that on happened. So maybe it's under privacy settings. No? Well, I'll have to look that up and get back to you on that. I feel bad that
Okay.
I can't pull it up.
Well, no worries. The stuff is buried sometimes.
Yeah, and it is so useful. And even on here, there's a few tools that I am missing. There's this ink to shape, but there's also an ink to text option that I just have not figured out how to turn on. And it seems to appear under my toolbar, but it isn't actually on here. So one
Hmm.
of these days I'll figure it out. But it works the same way as the ink to math.
Okay.
And I think, I was going to show one more fun, goofy little 3D model if you'd like, unless there's something
Okay.
else you want to go into.
No, no. Well, you have this PowerPoint available, right?
This,
Or through as a reference?
I don't actually. I shouldn't I?
Well, just because I mean, I won't remember like how to do a cutout, I mean,
Yeah.
that's
So
there's
this
a lot of info at
video
once.
will be available, and last week's video too, where we did it a little bit more. But it would be fun to make some exercise files.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that for the next few and put some up there. that can be downloaded from the website.
Okay.
And if you ever, have we talked about Linda before?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, and they do have some great files there too. Some of these I've
Okay.
actually borrowed from there. That was where I was going to grab the violin 3D
Oh,
video from to
okay.
try to just download it. It just was not working for me, which is all right. But yeah, it's fun. You can insert all sorts of different things to make layers in your pictures. You can grab a picture from maybe this file and pull it in and just add some different levels to the picture, and then you might add in some animated bees and have them buzz around behind them.
Okay,
All
cool.
sorts of different things. I'll insert, grab a 3D model, we'll grab a little critter. And if you ever wonder if an item is animated, they'll have this little picture of a running person in the corner.
Oh, all right.
That's how you know if it'll move or not. I think this octopus maybe juggles.
Okay.
There's all
I love
sorts of
it.
things.
Little birdie, that little puppy running through the flowers.
Yeah, yeah, so many options. So it's fun. And so today's kind of just, it's not the most of a tutorial, but just kind of this, like, look at all the things that you can do.
Oh, I love it. Yeah,
So,
I played last time. The first time I played with PowerPoint, first and only, was a few years back. I made a video, and it's just so elementary compared to what 365 is offering here.
so we
I
could
love it. That looks so cool.
send him to the back a little bit, send him backward. So he's behind some of the little flowers. So you can
That
see
is
there's all
cool.
kinds of possibilities. And
Yes.
when to use these, I mean, obviously sometimes animations can be a little bit distracting. If, say, was trying to have someone read text at the same time that they were watching this, they probably would just be watching the bird fly around. I know that's what I would do.
Right.
So this might be something that I'd stick up like at the end of, like, if someone has questions, this can be a
Right.
little screensaver of sorts. So that was roughly what I was going to go through today. 3D models, Morph, some of the AI features, and that different recording dashboard that they have in
Yeah,
365
it's fun stuff. Fun stuff.
for sure. So I'll stop the recording now. I won't